Well, that being said, you do have a very distinctive style that, a lot of people say, how did you create that? Part of that is your high notes or your altissimo register. How did that come about?
That was because I didn't know how to play the saxophone at first. It was because I was a clarinet player, and I thought, well, let's see, I'll do the stuff I do on the clarinet, and I'll just do it on the saxophone. And it immediately led to like notes that were, like jazz musicians like to say, off the horn. It was like stuff that usually didn't hear. Now, as it turns out, there's a classical tradition of very high note playing that I wasn't aware of at the time. And my friend Bert was also a guy who played a lot of high notes. I mean, he had developed it himself as well. So I don't know why this happened. It was a lot of accidents, But I did figure it out sort of on my own, how to make those notes come out of the instrument. But I figured out that if I played an octave higher than the rest of the band, that I could hear the PA system, and because it was separated from the rest of the sound. So I just decided that if I really wanted to hear myself, I was just going to have to play a lot higher than everybody else played. And it just became part of my routine. Plus, people love the fancy stuff like the circular breathing and the high notes. It's like you can get an audience really going if you're really sort of up the ante like that. People love that.
Now, we want to hear you demonstrate this in a minute, but I have just one more question. When you were working with Tower Power, the antics, if you can actually YouTube Lenny and Tower Power.
You can see me doing antics.
There's antics, but more than antics, it's like the wardrobe, flaming
and
sequence tuxedos, and
the whole thing. The whole rock and roll thing. It was so much fun. I mean, doesn't everybody want to do that? Like put on something completely crazy and dance like a fool? I mean, like, wouldn't you do that if you could? It's so much fun. Like nothing more fun than putting on crazy clothes and dancing around. It's like, so, I was completely game. I loved doing it. It was like exciting. Plus people would scream when you did it. It's like you'd always get a rise out of the audience if you did that.
Right.
It was showbiz. People have been doing that for centuries. You got to remember that the 70s was like the beginning of the rock and roll industry, and nobody knew what it was supposed to be like yet. It was like all those stadium concerts and all that stuff was just beginning to happen. And we do these crazy jobs where, like, they didn't know how to do security, and they never knew how to set the PA up properly, and we were just figuring it out as we went along. It was like being on the road with a bunch of pirates or something. It was pretty fun. It was we get on a Greyhound bus that we would book, we'd lease ourselves and travel for 18 hours at a stretch, and then do like a job in the middle of Sedalia, Missouri, and then get on the bus and go for another 20 hours and play someplace in Omaha or something. It was all over the place, and promoters were always like not paying us, and things like that. It was always it was a really rough and tumble kind of an experience. Jazz is a funny thing. It includes, I mean, if you want to use it as a category, I tend to not, but if you want to use it as a category, currently it contains simultaneously Louis Armstrong and Kenny G. I can't imagine people more different than that, and yet they managed to end up in the same general category of recordings. If you go to the record store, they're going to be, well, I guess we don't have record stores anymore, but when we had record stores, they would be in the same general vicinity.
There's a record store here.
There's a record store here. This is important, but they tend to be close to one another. And yet the basis, the premise of their music. Louis Armstrong was a kid who learned to play music on the streets and then the colored waifs home, and he danced for pennies as a child. And Kenny G owns a big share in Starbucks. These are different people. This is different backgrounds. This is different realities. Where Louis Armstrong's music came from was hearing Buddy Bolden play, and hearing, and being in New Orleans where combinations of Haitian music and ancient African traditions mixed with marching bands and somehow this interesting amalgam formed, and we had jazz. Kenny G, I remember Kenny. He he was a West Coast guy, so we used to he had a different name, I can't remember what it was, but
Gorelick.
Gorelick, right. But he was in bands that played on the same bill with Tower of Power and stuff, but he had a background, more in terms of culturally more similar to what I had. So not sure how these things, it's not always the same thing. So when I'm playing, I'm just playing the sum total of all of my influences at the moment. That's all it is. And I listen to everything. There's nothing I won't listen to. I love easy listening music. I think it's just amazing. When they have like 6 cellos and a vibraphone and 4 alto flutes, I think that's just the most incredible sound. I just can't believe those arrangements. And I had a Harry Belafonte record that I just wore out, I like Afro-Caribbean music. I like Arnold Schoenberg. I like, Jean-Claude Rizet's fractured digital synthesis music. I like John Coltrane. I listen to, I like Louis Armstrong. I listen to all that stuff, and it's just whatever you have around you, it ends up being part of you. But I like the adventure, and I like, what I really like is just, I get bored really easily, and I like to do things that are different. Mm-hmm. I'm always happy to do something different,
So if that's the case, how do you end up on Saturday Night Live for 25 years?
I have 2 kids. I had to raise them up, and I needed a steady in town.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go on the road, leave my poor little kids behind all the time, so I needed a steady job, Mm-hmm. And the good thing about Saturday Night Live is that it's a different show every single week, and it isn't boring. And I'm the band leader, so I get to say what we're going to play, and we never play the same music in any given 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. In fact, we don't play the same music for months at a time sometimes. I refuse to do that. Anything that vaguely resembles boring, I'm running away from it. So the musicians occasionally grumble a little bit about that, because it's like, they have to keep a lot of music in their head, but I just keep putting more. I think it's more exciting that way, just to keep more stuff coming, make more music, So I've been defining the nature of the band's performances now for about 15 years, and I shape them for my own taste, which is to be interesting and varietal. Now, you'd never hear this, because when we go to commercial, you hear like 3 seconds of us, but we play the whole commercial, and we play a warm-up for the house. And we're like, you ever been to a rodeo? Rodeos, they have these clowns that are like super important to the rodeo. Like if there's a problem at the rodeo, the clowns all run out. Like if the guy's got bucked off by the bull and the bull's about to step on him, out come the clowns, And like when nothing's happening in between acts, the clowns come out and run around and do something crazy. That's our job. Our job is to sort of keep everybody involved while there's nothing going on. Like they're moving the cameras over there and doing something like that, and we're going, no, look over here. We're over here. Look at that. That's more interesting. So that's our job. Basically, rodeo clowns. I mean, it's not very, like fancy, but it's important, and it keeps the audience entertained, and it's a live television show. I mean, we're the only live television show in America, except for sports.